Kevin Green is with me. We're looking at the S&P, Kevin, at 6,014, up about 8.5 points. Your thoughts on some of the levels this morning?
Yeah, Nicole, we continue to kind of gyrate around that 6,000 level, and that has been a key area of resistance. But now we are trying to treat it as an area of support here. And we did actually see some movement overnight that I want to kind of highlight here. The optimism that we are having from these China-U.S. Trade talks here did put a little bit of a bid in the E-mini S&P 500 overnight. Now, obviously, that has faded here a little bit, but if we get some positive commentary, which we are expecting to actually have some type of resolve here today, that could also move equity markets a little bit higher. And I think that's really what the market's kind of waiting on. We also have some economic data later this week with CPI coming out tomorrow. We have the 10-year Treasury auction, the 30-year auction on Thursday here. So a lot that's kind of on the radar, but we are seeing around 70% of the stocks in the S&P 500 to the upside. And what I'm focusing on, once again, that 6,000 level acting as a key area of support. And if we are able to break that to the downside, 59.80 is going to be your first area that I would expect maybe some major buyers to really kind of step in. To the upside here, we're looking at 60.45 to the upside. The real level is actually 60.50. We did see a little bit of an adjustment yesterday, but there's a little bit of a blend between the 60.40, 60.50 level, 60.45 right there in the midpoint here, Nicole. The trend is still to the upside. Hopefully we continue to see some positive developments here on the news front to really try to drive this market higher and try to reach all-time highs here.
So really trying to understand what is going on with the talks. As Michelle Gibley said, she said any talks seem better than silence, for example. So that does mean something, I guess, positive in her mind to have us talking. But as you noted, we're waiting on CPI, PPI, consumer sentiment, 3 Treasury auctions. So a big deal and busy week this week. How about the S&P versus the mid cap and small cap ratio? What are you watching there?
Yeah, you are seeing actually a really interesting development. Looking at the E-mini S&P 500, and this chart's actually looking at a 3-year weekly chart here. If you actually look at the development, you are seeing actually small caps starting to outperform the mid cap space here. That really gives you a little bit of a signal that there's risk on in the marketplace. And we've seen these type of consolidations and gyrations before. That orange line moving to the downside just means that small caps or the Russell's really outperforming the mid cap 400 S&P 500 index here. This is actually a really decent sign that shows you that there's a little bit more risk on sentiment taking place here in the market. And we can see the market continue to rise higher. If we do see that kind of stalling out, start seeing mid caps starting to outperform a little bit, start seeing large caps really starting to outperform a little bit when it comes to the small caps in relation to the small caps, that's when you get a little bit concerned here. So under the hood, that's one of those ratios that actually looks fairly positive for the market to not only take maybe a little bit of a consolidation breath because of some of the items that we talked about, but continue to move higher throughout the summer, which July and June are actually 2 of the more favorable bullish months that we've had for the S&P 500.
So tough because people are trying to diversify, right? And they say, I'll try mid caps, excuse me. And meantime, they're seeing this divergence and they're once again seeing, the big guys doing well. Let's talk about, you do also have uranium and Tesla. Let's first see the breakout in the uranium stocks. What stands out here?
Yeah, so we are looking at the Global X Uranium ETF, ticker symbol URA. We saw CCJ Chemical actually break out really nicely yesterday, and that also drove this index to the upside, breaking out from that $34.50 level and moving higher here. This is actually a really decent breakout. Let's see if it's actually going to be able to hold or if this is going to create a little bit of a blow off top here. But Nicole, you continue to see a lot of traders and investors doubling down on the nuclear theme, not only when you're looking at the stocks like an Oklo or an SMR, but also looking at the uranium providers. Any type of escalation, and we are actually expecting the EU to announce maybe some additional sanctions against Russia, not only in the oil patch, which is another reason why we're seeing energy prices moving higher, but that also could result in maybe Russia pulling back even more when it comes to uranium supplies to the West. Here in the United States, it's already kind of a big issue, but in Europe, it also could be a big issue as well. That means that stocks like Cameco could actually command or gain greater market share. And so you're seeing a little bit more optimism there. But an ETF that has had some issues trying to catch a little bit of a bid. But since March, or the end of March, we have seen a really strong reaction here. Let's see if it's going to be able to hold.
Yeah, understood. Last but not least, we'll look at Tesla. Your thoughts there?
Yeah, obviously, we're seeing Tesla up about 1.4% in today's session so far. Yesterday, towards the end of the day, we did see it ramp up after some positive comments, let's say neutral comments from President Trump. But from a technical standpoint, we did actually have a bullish engulfing candle for yesterday. So you want to actually see some follow through. And what I'm keeping my eye out on is going to be that gap, that yellow bar that I have there between 325 and let's say 330 or so. Let's see if that gap actually gets tested and gets filled. Tesla as a stock probably gets the most options flow that I see on an equity basis daily. And so if you do start seeing a lot more optimism, maybe those speculators start to pile into those options, those call options, maybe selling puts as well, which is also bullish for this name. And maybe we do see a little bit of recovery. If not, and we do see a failure, still keeping that 250 level on the chart here, because there is actually a pretty significant put wall that's there at 250. But the technical setup kind of tells you that maybe a trend change in direction from the aggressive pullback to the downside, maybe in the cards, at least for today and potentially for tomorrow.
Yeah, and thank you for that technical setup on Tesla.